When we talk about ADHD, it's always about focus, right? Hyperactivity, dopamine. But what if I told you there's this massive piece of the puzzle that we almost always overlook, and it might just be the key to everything? Yep, today we are talking about sleep.
Okay, let's just dive right in because sleep might be the single most important and yet most ignored factor in managing ADHD. Seriously, if you're trying to treat ADHD without looking at sleep, you might be starting the whole process from the wrong end.
And look, this isn't some minor detail. We're starting with this incredibly powerful statement from psychiatrist Dr. Sunil Reej for a reason. It perfectly frames the stakes here. Ignoring sleep? That's not just an oversight. It can literally be the reason a whole treatment plan falls apart.
So, just how big is this problem? Well, a huge study from Amsterdam UMC found that a staggering 60.1% of adults with ADHD screen positive for at least one sleep disorder. Let that sink in. That is well over half and way, way higher than in the general population.
And we're not just talking about, tossing and turning for a bit before you drift off. Sleep problems in ADHD is this huge umbrella that covers a whole range of really disruptive conditions. We're talking everything from restless leg syndrome, which is that intense urge to move your legs, to sleep apnea, where you actually stop breathing. It's really complex. So why is this connection so incredibly strong? Well, here's where it gets interesting. It is not a one-way street. ADHD and poor sleep are actually locked in this vicious cycle, where each one just makes the other one worse. Think about it like this. On one side, you have the core ADHD traits, like a racing mind or hyperactivity, that make it physically hard to shut down and sleep. But then, on the other side, that exact lack of sleep directly mimics and cranks up the volume on ADHD symptoms. You get more inattention, more irritability, worse impulse control the next day. So, the less you sleep, the worse the ADHD gets. And the worse the ADHD gets, the harder it is to sleep. See the loop?
And this goes even deeper than just behavior. Dr. Reed suggests we should maybe reframe how we even think about ADHD. What if it's not just a disorder of focus, but a fundamental disorder of rhythm? The body's internal clocks, the ones that regulate our attention, our emotions, and our sleep, they're all connected. And in ADHD, they can all be out of sync. This idea, a disorder of rhythm, is absolutely key.
So, this brings us to a really critical question. We all know stimulant medication is the go-to treatment for ADHD, but its whole job is to promote wakefulness, so could it be unintentionally making the sleep problem even worse? Well, the evidence seems to point to yes. A placebo-controlled study on kids found that extended-release stimulants significantly increased the time it took for them to fall asleep. On average, it led to 30 minutes of lost sleep every single night. Now, while those meds are essential for functioning during the day, it's clear they can come at a cost when it's time to rest. And this brings us to probably the most critical point of all. Fixing the problem isn't as simple as just, hey, try to sleep more. The real key is understanding that not all ADHD-related sleep issues are the same. You have to know exactly what you're up against. And if we look at the data from that same Amsterdam study, we see these really clear patterns, these different types of sleep disruption. The most common one? Delayed sleep phase syndrome. These are your chronic night owls whose internal clock is just shifted later. It's almost impossible for them to fall asleep before 2 or 3 in the morning. And right behind that, you've got classic insomnia and restless leg syndrome. Each one of these is a distinct clinical issue, and each one needs a totally different approach.
This is the crucial point, and Dr. Reed really emphasizes this. You have to diagnose the specific subtype of the sleep issue. Just giving generic sleep advice for, say, a neurobiological rhythm disorder or an iron deficiency, it's like prescribing glasses without doing an eye exam first. You are completely flying blind.
So how in the world do we break this cycle? Well, the good news is, once you identify the right problem, there is a whole toolbox of targeted solutions that can make a huge, dramatic difference. A fantastic starting point for clinicians, and honestly for understanding your own sleep, is something called the 3P model. It's a really simple but super effective way to figure out the root cause of someone's sleep problems by breaking it down into 3 key factors. So first, you have the predisposing factors. This is your underlying vulnerability, like a genetic tendency to be anxious. Second, the precipitating factors. That's the event that kicked the whole problem off, like a super high-stress new job. And third, and this is often the most important one, are the perpetuating factors. These are the habits and beliefs, like scrolling on your phone late at night or worrying about not sleeping, that keep the insomnia going long after that initial trigger is gone.
Okay, so once you have that diagnosis, you can pull the right tool from the toolbox. For that delayed sleep rhythm, the solution is often precisely timed melatonin and some bright light therapy first thing in the morning to reset the body clock. For restless legs, the very first step is checking ferritin levels because it's often linked to an iron deficiency. And if stimulants are causing the problem, just adjusting the timing of the dose or switching to a different type can solve it. It's all about targeting the specific issue. But what if the issue is more about those habits and anxieties that keep insomnia going night after night? For that, there is an incredibly effective, non-drug treatment that is considered the absolute best in its class.
It's called cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI for short. It is literally recognized as the gold standard first-line treatment for chronic insomnia. So instead of a pill, it works by systematically retraining your brain and your behaviors to actually prepare for and get good sleep.
And CBTI is incredibly practical. It involves these really concrete steps, like stimulus control, which means if you're not asleep after 20 minutes, you get out of bed. This helps break that mental link between your bed and being anxiously awake. And there's sleep restriction, where you temporarily limit your time in bed to match only the hours you're truly sleeping, which powerfully builds up your natural sleep drive. It combines all this with therapy to challenge those negative thoughts about sleep and reinforces it all with good old sleep hygiene. And the results? They can be completely life-changing. Dr. Rees shares this case study of a 35-year-old woman with ADHD. She was really struggling, even though she was on stimulants. But after they identified she had restless legs and low iron, adjusted her medication timing, and put her on a structured sleep routine, her attention, her mood, and her energy all dramatically improved in just 3 weeks. The breakthrough wasn't some new ADHD drug. It was simply better sleep. So let's just bring it all home. What have we learned? A huge number of adults with ADHD, we're talking over 60%, have a co-occurring sleep problem. And this is no coincidence. It's a vicious cycle where each one makes the other worse, and it's often rooted in that idea of disordered rhythm. The biggest takeaway here is that you can't just use a generic sleep more approach. You have to diagnose the specific type of sleep issue. But once you do that, this whole toolbox of targeted solutions, from supplements to powerful therapies like CBTI, can finally break that cycle for good. Which really leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If we start to reframe ADHD not just as a disorder of focus, but as a disorder of rhythm, well, that forces us to look beyond just attention. It asks us to look at the fundamental patterns of our lives. So the real question to ask yourself is, what rhythm in your life, whether it's sleep, your daily routine, or something else entirely, needs your attention first?